Hey guys, it's Shnickerman here, back with another video. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different. Over the past few months, I've been playing a lot of games, but also I'm thinking about gaming as an art form, and I've always enjoyed the soundtracks and the music for video games, and so I decided to take on a little bit of a side project of taking all the video game soundtracks that I had and putting them onto my computer into a folder so I have all of my game music in one place. I also have 2 vinyl records, so I've been converting them into audio files so that way I can have them in the folder as well. And I've just been listening to them on replay and just appreciating that part of gaming is video game soundtracks. They really set a mood and a tone, and when you listen to them, you can automatically think about the game and it brings back memories. So today, we're going to talk about video game soundtracks, my collection, and what do I think about the different soundtracks that I own. First is my newest pickup. This is the Final Fantasy VIII picture vinyl disc. There are 2 discs, which I won't show you right now, but it has the soundtrack from Final Fantasy VIII, and this, if you're interested in it, was able to be purchased from SquareEnix.com. I'm not sure if it's still there. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested. The Final Fantasy VIII soundtrack is really important to me. Final Fantasy VIII is one of my favorite games of all time. I think the music for it is really, really interesting. It sets the tone. It's a little bit futuristic, a little bit synthy, and I just like all the tracks on it, so I was really happy to add that to my collection. The second soundtrack I have in my collection is the Rondo of Blood, Dracula X 2-disc record soundtrack right here. I'll show you the inside just because it's cool. Check that out. Dracula X. This one's special to me because I didn't really play very many Castlevania games, pretty much 0 until maybe 10 years or so ago. And so when they did the Rondo of Blood Symphony of the Night game on PSN, I decided to pick that up and I started playing it, and I really, really enjoyed Rondo of Blood as well as Symphony of the Night. But I really, really like the music from it. So I saw that this vinyl was coming out, and it had the vinyl from both the games, Dracula X and Rondo of Blood, so I picked it up. And I will tell you that this soundtrack is really, really good. I don't even know how to explain it, but it just automatically puts you back in playing this game and thinking about dodging all those undead creatures and different things. I'd highly recommend this. I think this is still pretty readily available. I'll try to find a link and put it in the description below. The next soundtrack is the Undertale soundtrack. This is the collector's edition that came with the collector's edition of Undertale itself. It's 2 discs, and it also has a nice, like, it has all the music for it and everything. Super interesting. I highly recommend this soundtrack. So the thing about Undertale for me is I heard about it for years before I picked it up or played it or anything like that. So I bought this version of the game, and I needed something to listen in the car on my way to work and long trips. So I started listening to the soundtrack, and I was already hooked on the game just by listening to the soundtrack alone. And then I played the game, and now I have even more love for it, but highly would recommend, if you don't have the Undertale soundtrack, to look and pick it up. It's really, really, really good stuff by Toby Fox. Next soundtrack in my collection is the Streets of Rage 4 soundtrack. I haven't listened to this version of it, but I have played the game. I didn't play, I haven't been super into beat 'em up games, and I haven't ever played any of the Streets of Rage for more than a few minutes, but I was intrigued in the new one that was coming out. I wanted to see how it was. I picked it up on the Xbox Game Pass and played most of the levels, and the gameplay I wasn't super sold on, but I really, really was impressed with the soundtrack. So I picked this game up from Limited Run Games, and it came with the soundtrack. So, like I said, even if you're not into some of these games, check out the soundtracks, and they kind of stand on their own. So this would be one I would say definitely check out, even if you're not interested in the game. This is a game that I really looked forward to for the story elements and everything. This is the Catherine soundtrack. It actually comes with a little art book, which I'm not going to show you, but if you look in the back, you have the soundtrack. This just came with like a specific version of Catherine, and what's interesting about this is that there is a bit of music in Catherine, but the soundtrack itself are basically just the tracks that are based off classical music. And in my opinion, that's the best part of the soundtrack. This thing, I swear I could listen to this soundtrack over and over again. I really kind of found my love for classical music again, and this is pretty much the reason why. But if you've never heard this, definitely check out this soundtrack as well. The next one, not super long and very obscure game. I talked about it in my top 10 games on the rise. This is the, I always have to read the name, Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner Soul Hackers soundtrack. Pretty short, but nice rock songs. Got a little bit of a Persona vibe, but not too much. It is a Shin Megami Tensei game, but solid soundtrack nonetheless. Next one's another one that you may have seen me pick up, but this is the soundtrack for Digimon Story, Cyber Sleuth, Hacker's Memory. This soundtrack is kind of hard to find. It only came in a Japanese collector's edition. But there's something about these newer Digimon games that they have really, really good soundtracks, really underrated. This one is very digital heavy and like synth heavy, but you really do feel like you're in the digital world, and that's what I like about it. So if you're a Digimon fan, or if you just like that type of music, definitely try to track this one down. One of my favorite soundtracks. The next few soundtracks I don't necessarily have that much to say. I need to give it more of a listen. This one's for Shantae, HalfGenie Hero. This is Risky Beats. This came with the special edition of this Shantae game. Pretty nice upbeat music, got a lot of variety, kind of classic like platformer type music. It's worth a listen and worth tracking down if you're a fan of the Shantae series. The next one is for Final Fantasy Explorers. I never actually played this specific game before, but it's a reward on Square Enix's website. I like game soundtracks. It's kind of like a Final Fantasy light. It gets you in the Final Fantasy mood, but in my opinion, the tracks aren't necessarily that standouty. But I do like to listen to this from time to time. The last one, the Cursed soundtrack that took me forever to open. This is a soundtrack that looks like an NES game for the Stranger Things 3, the game. Extremely short soundtrack. 8-bit/16-bit inspired soundtrack. It's solid, extremely short, more of a novelty item, but happy to add it to the collection. Next one is another one that I kind of wanted to point out for people, especially is if you get The Witcher 2 Enhanced Edition. It has 2 discs already, and then it has the soundtrack. I haven't even played this game, I haven't really listened to the soundtrack, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it's more of a scored soundtrack, which I really appreciate, but just something to look out for, Witcher 2 soundtrack. Another one that I almost forgot about, but I don't know how I could. One of my favorite soundtracks, actually, Stardew Valley. I think that this just came, I don't even know if it was a pre-order bonus or if it just came with the physical version, but definitely try to track this down if you're a Stardew Valley fan. I don't know, something about this, again, similar to the other ones, where just automatically puts me back into the game. The soundtrack is like iconic, really farm sounding, but you know, it's got 16-bit throwbacks. I don't know how to explain it. I'll try to play some music from it right here, but definitely check out the Stardew Valley soundtrack. Next one is Tony Hawk's American Wasteland CD. This one technically isn't really a soundtrack. So for this game, Tony Hawk's American Wasteland, I really enjoyed this game. It's got a bunch of modern songs on it, and then it's got a bunch of punk bands that cover like 80s punk bands, 90s punk bands. I would say more recent rock bands that cover older punk bands. And so this is a CD of just the cover songs, And man, there are some good cover songs on here. I really like this game a lot. I really like the soundtrack a lot. Had to pick it up. It's super cheap. It's got anyone from Census Fail to My Chemical Romance, Saves the Day, Fall Out Boy, Alkaline Trio. Really good tracks on here. Listen to this thing on replay all the time in my car. Next one, first Persona soundtrack. Really good. I love that there's some consistency between all the different Persona games, their soundtracks, and all that. Really good to listen to. I didn't even play through the whole game yet, but I love the soundtrack. Again, another one that people don't know about is if you just buy the PlayStation 2 version of Persona 4, which I believe is still available for very cheap, even brand new, you open it up, and first disc is the soundtrack. And man, if we're going to talk about really good soundtracks, one of my top of all time, Persona 4. I don't even know what to say about it. If you've never played Persona 4, you might not get it. If you play the game, you're going to love like every single track on the soundtrack. So definitely check it out. Anyway guys, I hope this video has been interesting for you. Take some time and appreciate video game soundtracks. They're diverse, they can be so many different types of sounds, but a lot of them will put you right back into the mood of playing the game and bring back those memories. And I think it's an art form that a lot of people kind of take for granted. They don't really think about video game soundtracks as like real music, quote unquote, but there are some amazing composers and amazing songwriters that make really, really good songs that just happen to be premiered in different video games. So if you guys have a favorite soundtrack, one that you think I should add to my collection, please let me know in the comments. I would love to add some new soundtracks to my collection. And if you guys like videos about retro games or different game guides, be sure to subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.